So this marvellous period of Lent is upon us, and we had just a few days ago the temptations of Christ in the wilderness by the devil, 3 temptations. He's led there, St. Luke says, by the Holy Spirit. St. Mark in his Gospel speaks about Jesus being thrown into the desert. And I think we've all had that experience. If we haven't, it will come our way when we suddenly feel like we've been picked up in our bodies sometimes, certainly in our spirits, our emotions, picked up and taken to a place where we hadn't really thought was possible, but it is true. And that is very much the work of God if we just give ourselves a bit of time to understand it and interpret that moment. So Jesus is led by the Spirit out into the wilderness for 40 days, and we're trying to let ourselves be led out there too into the wilderness. Even amidst the busyness of life, we can sort of have this attitude of being led by Christ to try and give up some things we should give up, and that's very, very important. I do encourage you to do some fasting, not too rigorous, but I do encourage you to give up some things which will sort of bring alive your spiritual life. In the second week now we have the transfiguration of Christ. So the first week is about focusing on the true humanity of Christ. The second week is focusing on his divinity. And so we put them together and we have this entirely unique person, which is Jesus Christ. No one has ever been like him before or after. He's entirely unique, and through his resurrection he's completely available to each one of us. He's truly human and truly divine. It's an incredible gift to us. And this week is the Transfiguration. We're doing it this year according to the Gospel of Luke. And both Mark and Matthew give us the Transfiguration event. Luke gives it to us, but Luke gives us an additional fact which I think is most helpful and most important. He tells us about the conversation that takes place between Moses and Elijah and Jesus. Now Elijah was assumed into heaven. You'll find that in the second book of Kings. In the book of Deuteronomy, you'll find that Moses is buried, but then with the comment, but we don't know where his grave is. And so there's a sort of an implication that he too was assumed into heaven. So the Transfiguration is in that mode of Jesus being taken up into the glory of the Father, as were Elijah and Moses. Most importantly, Moses and Elijah are speaking to him. In the English language it says about his departure. In the original language it says about his exodus. So that throws us way back to the Old Testament, that great event where the Jewish people are in slavery for 400 years and God liberates them eventually and then leads them through the Sinai desert to receive the gift of the commandments. And God says, now here are the commandments, obey them, otherwise you'll fall into a worse form of slavery than you were under the Egyptians. This is most important then for this period of Lent, that God is saying to us, look, I want to liberate you. I want to liberate you from all forms of sin and distraction, so that I become the center of your life, so that love begins to pervade your life again. That's the whole point of going into the desert. It's not an end in itself. The desert is a means to an end, and the means to the end is the wilderness and the desert, leading us to a deeper relationship with God. That's what it's all about. And this gospel this week really drives it home. Moses and Elijah, once again, speaking to Jesus about his exodus, about his liberation. He's going to go through death, through to his Father, and then be resurrected and liberate each and every one of us as the central act in human history, that great dying of Christ and the great rising of Christ. And that, of course, is made present to us in our baptism. So it's a beautiful gift. So we really need to grab hold of this mystery and let Christ enter our life once again as we go with him out into the wilderness and out into the desert.